Hey everyone, welcome to week 2 of 1102. This week we're going to talk about stuff that'll help you prepare to start analyzing short stories and looking at stories from a critical perspective, okay, which will lead us into our first paper. So here we go. Let's see here. Our announcements are usually going to be up here once again. I hope everyone did the welcome quiz, okay? Make sure if you have not that you have gone start here and you've downloaded the list of assignments and due dates, okay? If you have, then you would have already downloaded this. And today you would know that we are looking at the Duck McStuffins article, and I'm going to discuss, I'm actually not going to discuss tone and style today. I'm going to push that till next week. This week I'm going to discuss literary criticism. So, some of these things change a little bit in my lecture topics as I go through the course and see what people really need, what would be better. Alright, so let's get into the slideshow. Okay, so for this week, what we're going to do, actually, before I get into what I'm going to cover in the PowerPoint, let's talk about semester novels. Okay, I discussed this last week, but I just want to re-emphasize, all right, that you need to select a novel to read this semester. You will write about this novel in Essay 3 and the literary analysis essay. But we need to start now reading the book. You need to start now reading the book, all right, to make sure that it's finished by the time that you get to writing Essay 3. All right, so your novel has to be a contemporary novel written within the last 5 years, all right, which takes us to 2016. So 2016 all the way up to 2021. Now, this is crazy to say that. Oh, this is old PowerPoint, so this is last year's PowerPoint, so I had 2015. So it must be a narrative, okay? It has to tell a story. It can be nonfiction, but it can't be informational. It can be nonfiction that is like a memoir, okay, that tells the story of someone's life as they are going through it. It needs to be written like a novel, even if it is nonfiction. So that's what I just said. We're not doing graphic novels for this paper. We're doing prose novels, full-length novels. Okay. Some examples of books you can read. All right. We have here the Leave the World Behind, which is a kind of a post-apocalyptic, like right on the first day of like the possible apocalypse. All right, what that would be like if you were on vacation at a beach and you're hearing rumors of something happening. Okay, that's bad, and the dilemma that you might be faced with. Okay. Trevor Noah's Born a Crime. As long as you didn't read this in high school, my high school that I worked for, Parkview, the 9th graders started reading this book during 9th grade year. So if you were taught this book, no, okay. But if you weren't taught this book, then you could read it. Even though it is nonfiction, it tells a story. It tells the story of his life growing up in post-apartheid Africa, South Africa. The book We Cast a Shadow. This is a fictional book, again, about a dude and what he's facing and what he's going through and stuff. So these are all some like cool books, okay? Books though that you cannot read, okay? These are like books like Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. It's a great book. It's been made into a recent TV show, okay? But it was written in 1985, and it's a very highly taught book. There's a lot of information out there about this book, so I don't want you to read that book for this paper. I want this paper to be on a lesser known book. Who Fears Death? Great book. Again, this takes place in the future. This takes place in Africa, and with a girl who develops supernatural powers. Really intriguing. I think HBO is going to make this into a series. But you can't read it for this paper because it's published in 2010. Native Son. Awesome book about how society has missed a lot of the crime and violence that we have in our cities. And so it means I still teach this book a lot in high school. It's still very relevant. And so, while it's a great book, it was published in 1940. So, now for this paper. Stand from the Beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America. Awesome book. I will print off excerpts of this book and teach it in some of my classes. But it doesn't tell one story all the way through. It's historical nonfiction. So, it's not a narrative. So, we can't do this. Now for this paper, okay? Your selection is due by August 29th. And you'll have to take the, let's see if I can show you. If you go to lessons, let's see, the independent novel quiz is in lesson 1. So let's go down to lesson 1. Literary Analysis Novel Choice Quiz. It's not really a quiz. Okay, it's you take it and it just asks you questions about your book, like what year was it published, what's it about, what genre is it, that kind of stuff. Okay, so click there and take it. And some people have already started taking it because they already know what book they're going to start reading. Okay. You don't have to do it on August 29th. It's just due by August 29th, declaring what book you are reading. Okay? All right. Okay. So what we're going to start talking about today is criticism. Okay? Literary criticism of your work, of things that we are reading. Okay? All your papers are going to be considered literary criticism, where you are analyzing the text and you are discussing what topics and ideas it is talking about. You're not criticizing the text as much as you are critically analyzing the story and what's happening and what are the messages that are coming out through theme, symbolism, tone. Okay, and so you read this Doc McStuffins analysis, all right, which we're going to talk about in a moment. And then this week you're going to read Strawberry Spring, which is a short story by Stephen King. And then you're going to also watch a music video called This Is America by Childish Gambino, which I'll talk about at the end. And next week I'm going to go through the process of analyzing those things. And that's going to mirror what you're going to do on your first paper, okay? Thinking critically about a story, analyzing it, and trying to find the deeper meaning in it, okay? So, you know, the Doc McStuffins, the reason I want you to read that is because, you know, we have this cartoon that's seen as just a children's TV show. And oftentimes when we think about TV, you know, kids shows, TV shows for kids and stuff, they're simple. They're there to be entertaining. Some parents, you know, which I mean, I've even done this. They use TV and TV shows as babysitting. You know, to keep the kids active, or focused, or contained, while parent is doing other things. I've been way guilty of that before. Okay. So we have this TV show on Disney, okay? But then we have W. Kamau Bell, who is a comedian, and he's a host for some CNN shows, okay? He's a social critic, okay? Even though he does it with also a humorous tone. he critiques the importance of Doc McStuffins, and he kind of creates, takes it from, we could have this sort of simplified assumption about the show in terms of it just being, for children, and he dissects it and talks about why it's actually very important. Okay, and that's what you're going to be doing in your writing. You're going to be taking pieces of literature and analyzing and discussing their importance, their deeper meanings, the messages that they're conveying. Okay, so let's look at this Doc McStuffins. So for one, he creates a thematic analysis of Doc McStuffins. I'm going to go over a theme more explicitly next week, okay? But essentially, theme is like the overall message, okay? It's the universal message for all readers, okay? So it doesn't matter who you are. The theme of, in this case, Doc McStuffins, can apply to everyone, okay? Universal for all readers, or in this case, viewers, okay? So Kamal says that the show's objective is to get kids to be more comfortable speaking up for themselves and to not be afraid to get help when they need it. That's a universal theme that applies to all readers, okay? I guess viewers as well. People who read the article and people who view the TV show. Any kid who is, just, regardless of color, black, white, Hispanic, Middle Eastern, Asian descent, whoever, anywhere, someone in Antarctica, okay, who's watching Doc McStuffins, the show can teach these children, right, how to advocate for themselves and how to not be afraid, all right? And so anyone can watch it and get this theme from it. Okay, so that's thematic analysis. Theme applies to everyone, okay? And then the piece goes on and he makes some social criticism. Social criticism is analysis, okay, on societal aspects. And this could be all of society or it can be specific parts of society, okay? And I want to emphasize this term criticism. When we use the term criticism in literature, we don't mean that we're putting it down. Like, if I were to criticize a person, that generally means that I am speaking not necessarily negatively, but I'm telling them ways that they can improve, okay? That's how we usually associate it. But criticism in general is just very synonymous to analysis, all right? It's a critique. It is thinking about something and deconstructing it and talking about its parts, okay? It can be positive or negative. So here we have some commentary about society, generally toward a specific group, okay? Social criticism tends to talk about specific groups rather than universal everyone. And so in this Doc McStuffins analysis, we have some social criticism by Kamal Bell, all right, analyzing the messages this sends, okay, specifically to black viewers, okay. It says, next we have Doc's dad. What's his job? Well, actually, I'm not sure exactly what he does. I'm pretty sure he's a stay-at-home dad, which is also revolutionary for multiple reasons. Mom works, dad's at home taking care of the kids, and again, these are black people, okay. So, I'm not making this statement. Kamal's making this statement, and clearly what he is emphasizing is that it appears that in most black American families, there is still that traditional sort of setup where if someone's at home with the kids, then generally it's mom. And so by him saying that that this is revolutionary, that this is really important to see, okay, that this can change the perspective that not just moms can stay home with the children, but also dads. And so, he's making a social criticism where by including the line, and again, these are black people, okay, he is directing that towards that group, okay, which he belongs to. The author does, okay? Kamau Bell. And so he can make that sort of connection that this show is positive for everyone because it helps kids to be more comfortable speaking up, and this is also positive for the black community to kind of validate that it's okay for women to work while the men stay at home and take care of the kids. That's all right. And then he goes on to talk about how Doc McStuffins is not only one of the best shows on television, it's also one of the most important shows in the history of television. And my two daughters, which watch it thinking it is awesome, but more importantly, they think it is normal. A black female doctor is no big deal, and it should be no big deal for children of all races. So here he's commenting on the fact that and he mentions earlier, right, about how there's not a lot of representation on television of doctors being of other races. That he made a comment earlier, in the piece that he was glad that he didn't have to wait for his children to become adults and watch Grey's Anatomy to see a black doctor, indicating that there's a lot of images on TV of white doctors, and that Dr. McStuffins is one of the only shows that have a black female doctor. And that's important for the kids who are watching it, so that way they know when they see that, they see themselves in that, and they know that they too could be doing the same thing. Okay, and so his argument is that Dr. McStuffins is very, very important for, while everyone benefits from it, okay, but specifically people in the black community, and also, I think we can probably go further, as in like women in general, little girls, seeing themselves as doctors, not seeing themselves as nurses on the TV show, but doctors. Okay, so that's the social criticism aspect of Dr. McStuffins, based upon Kamau Bell's interpretation of it. That's how he read it. Okay, so you're going to be doing something similar in the stories that you read. You are going to be providing some thematic and social criticism to the stories that you read. Okay. Okay. So that's Doc McStuffins. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into looking at. Y'all can't see this. Display settings. There we go. So now we're going to go into criticisms in general. So, literary criticism, okay? So as you write your papers this year, you're going to have to apply literary criticism to the poems and the short stories and the novels that you read, okay? Literary criticism. These are lenses you can use to understand different meanings of a text. Text can be read in many different ways, okay? So, we can look at the symbolism, the theme, the tone, all that of a that is, evident in a text. But then also you can look even more deeply into that text to find more applicable meaning. So the first one that we're going to go over is historical biographical. You can analyze a story, a poem, or a book in relation to the time in which it was published as a reflection of that time, or as also a reflection of the author itself. So this approach sees a literary work as a reflection of the author's life and times, or the life and times of the characters in the work. Critics using this school of thought investigate how plot details, settings, and characters of the work reflect or are representative of events, settings, and peoples in the author's life, or a direct outgrowth of it, okay, of the culture. So, like, people are a product of the times. People are, so, like, for example, okay. If an author is writing about sort of a controversial topic for the time period, okay, we should sometimes try to get within the perspective of that time period when analyzing the literature, rather than applying our contemporary perspectives onto the work. Okay, so like for example, The Great Gatsby. Okay, we can look at how we can use The Great Gatsby to study it as if it was a book that just illustrates what life was like during what's called the Roaring '20s. Okay, we can look at it within the context of the time in which it was written. That it's almost like a snapshot of the culture and what people were like and what people were doing. And so sometimes we can't always apply our modern day perspectives onto a text. Like, so for example, okay, The Crucible. I don't know if any of y'all study The Crucible. All right, I really like teaching it a lot. So like the main character, John Proctor, in The Crucible, he exists during the 1600s in Salem, Massachusetts, during the Puritan era, which was very, very controlling. It was very Christian dominant. It was very patriarchal. Men ruled the whole community. All right, and so John Proctor, the character in the time of the Crucible, in the 1600s, he's very much of a feminist almost. I think he would be considered a feminist in the 1600s. But if we take him and we look at him through contemporary lenses, we can see that no, like if that character exited the 1600s and was morphed into the 2000s, he would not be progressive and he would not be a feminist. But keeping him where he is in the 1600s and seeing him and analyzing him in reference to that time, we can see that he's very liberally minded. Okay, and so historical analysis looks at the piece as being reflective of the time and what does it say about the time, or it can be biographical, where we look at how this piece, even if this is a fictional thing, it actually is reflecting a lot of biographical information that deals with the author. Okay. All right. So like F. Scott Fitzgerald, the author of The Great Gatsby, right? We could say that he recreated his social class and experience in New York during the 20s. That like he essentially is Nick Carraway, the main character of The Great Gatsby. Okay, and that much of what he's writing about, these are people that he actually knows in real life, but he makes up a fictional world and fictional characters' names to tell his story, even though they're based on real people. So that's historical biographical. Then there is moral philosophical. This approach takes the position that the larger function of literature is to teach morality and probe philosophical issues such as ethics, religion, or the nature of humanity. We can analyze the story by what's the bigger message that's going out there to the world, okay? And so, like, if you read The Great Gatsby, we could say that the moral philosophical analysis of this book would be that the tragic ending of the novel serves as karma paid to the people who live debaucherous and materialistic lives. We can see it as being very that the people, the main characters, with the exception of Nick, are not really good people. They're not really good ethical people. They're not very moral, and so their screwed up lives. It serves as it's kind of, that's what they get for not having great life, for not having good values. Okay, they have all this dysfunction in their life. Feminist gender criticism. So this approach asks us to use a wide variety of issues related to gender concerning the author, the work itself, the reader, and the societies of the author and reader to determine the stance of the work on the feminist continuum. Okay, so we're looking at about how these stories deal with the male-dominated world. Okay, and how do women interact and find their place in these stories? Usually we look for the development of male and female characters and their motives to see how the author in his or her times affected the gender roles in the work. Okay, the piece of work, not like employment. So yeah, so like gender roles, okay? I mean, so like a feminist reading, once again, of like The Crucible, all right, is that women were mistrusted and controlled in normal society. John Proctor showed that he was more of he was more about egalitarianism. He saw women as equal. He had an equal relationship with Elizabeth, and he would try to warn her when she got too comfortable with other men. Like, she was used to being able to speak her mind to John. But when she's speaking to other characters who are not used to hearing from a woman, he tells her, you are shocking them, okay? You are bewildering these men that you're talking to so openly. He has to remind her that, like, even though, like, she's equal to him in the home, all right, she still has to remember that she is a subject out in society, okay, and that she needs to tone it down. He's not telling her to tone it down because he wants her to tone it down. He's telling her to tone it down out in public for her own safety, okay? Now, with The Great Gatsby, we have, following World War I, women gained a certain level of social freedom, similar to men, due to their assistance in the industrial marketplace, while the majority of the men were at war. World War I ushered forth the era of the new woman, one who was liberated from the confines of the domestic expectations of traditional women. But not everyone in society accepted this change. So, like, during World War I, all these men were off to war in Europe. And so women left the household where they had been forced to resign and took over the jobs in factories and in plants and in business and law and all sectors of society. And so this really empowered women. It made them feel, more confident. And so this started to come out through the way they were dressing and the way they were behaving and then the way they were going out and stuff. They kind of, they liked it. So there was this idea of the new woman. So here in The Great Gatsby, the novel abounds in minor female characters whose dress and activities identify them as incarnations of the new woman. And they are portrayed as clones of a single negative character type, shallow, exhibitionists, revolting, and deceitful. So The Great Gatsby, the book, kind of puts a negative light on these new women. And it essentially, by portraying many of these women as being shallow, revolting, deceitful, it negatively criticizes this new role for women. And it reinforces putting women back in the household as housewives and moms, and indicating that that's what they should be. Okay, so The Great Gatsby doesn't do very well under a feminist reading. And then there is sociological / Marxist criticism. Okay, this viewpoint considers particular aspects of the political content of the text, the author, the historical and social cultural context of the work, and the cultural, political, and personal situation of the reader in relationship to the text. So these critics tend to focus on the overall themes of the work as they relate to economic class, race, sex, and instances of oppression and or liberation. This type of analysis focuses on who has the power and who does not have the power. Okay? What does the text say about people of color? How does it treat minority groups, okay, who do not have the social and political power? What does the text say about economic differences in the characters? What does it say about people who are impoverished? Who has the power and who is subjugated by those who have the power? Okay, so it really focuses on power structures in society. So, like, if you were reading The Great Gatsby, okay, the fact that there are simply no mentionings of a black character at all in the novel, they're not even acknowledged, and the fact that Tom, the character Tom, is reading a book about the superiority of the white race, that demonstrates the racism and elitism that is found in the upper levels of class and high society in America during the 20s. Now, this can be fairly or unfairly put onto the author. Either this reflects Fitzgerald's own racism, that he doesn't think black people are good enough to be in his books, or he did this on purpose, where he's criticizing the upper class, and therefore he purposely leaves black people out of it in his book, because there are no black people welcomed into the upper class in the 1920s. So he's just giving an honest portrayal of what that society is like. Okay, so these things I went over today, okay, I want you to be picking one of these to write about for your papers, okay? Historical, moral, feminist, sociological, all right? So what we're going to do is this. You are going to read a lot this week. This week you are supposed to be reading. You're going to read chapters 1 and 2 of the textbook from Lesson 1. You're going to read, in Lesson 1, analyze novels and short stories. You're going to read close readings in Lesson 1. You can read literary criticism in Lesson 1. Okay? And then you're going to read the short story Strawberry Spring by Stephen King. And then before next week, you are going to watch This Is America, the music video to that story, to that song. Okay? I'll show you where you can see that on Blackboard. You need to have all this stuff read before watching next week's lecture. I'm going to go over next week. I want to talk about tone and style. I'm going to talk about Strawberry Spring. I'm going to do a criticism of the story based upon one of these, or maybe more than one. Okay. I'm going to go over This Is America, the music video, and talk about symbolism and theme. Okay, there's a lot that I'm going to go over, because the things I'm going to go over are what you are going to be doing in paper number 1 over a short story of your own choosing. Okay, so you might be you might look at this and you might compare it to some other classes who seem to have more work. All right, but you have a lot of reading, and they're not reading the Strawberry Spring, okay? And so I really want you to make sure that you are putting the time and effort, even though there's no grade for reading chapter 1 through 2, analyzing the novels, okay? All that information has to be sort of personified or evident in your writing, okay? So like if you're writing, when you write paper number 1, and I can see that like, it doesn't seem like you really did a whole lot of like close reading. You didn't do a whole lot of really trying to grasp literary criticism, okay? Then you're going to receive lower points if your thoughts aren't really developed, okay? So the reading of the material will help you do better on your papers. And I want to fix this because this is annoying me. Look at that. Okay. So like next week, okay, in the lecture, I am covering all these things. Essay 1, analyzing a short story. I'm going to go over what your paper is going to be about. I'm going to go over proper MLA heading and show you and give you a template for that. I'm going to go over proper paragraph structures and what needs to be in your paragraphs. I'm going to go over the style in Strawberry Spring. I'm going to do some literary criticism. I'm going to do symbolism, theme, and tone with This Is America. Okay? So make sure that you complete all those things. You need to make sure you're on Blackboard, okay? And that you go to the lessons, which I was just in, the analyzing literature lesson. You need to make sure that you're reading all this stuff. Read all of that. And then you go to instructor lectures, okay? This is where I have all my videos. This is where you'll find the This Is America video, okay? Make sure you watch that. Make sure you watch it before you watch lecture 3. Okay? Alrighty. Well, if you have any questions, send me an email and I'll get back to you. Alrighty. Bye-bye. Maybe.